So we have some very practical halachas to discuss. Sif Daled Hey Vav and Zayin. Sif Daled and Hey specifically are really dinim in Hilchos Gzela, and we'll see how they come in over here to Hilchos Metziah. But we actually already mentioned them when we learned Hilchos Gzela, actually in the very first shir, and at that time we mentioned that when we get here to Hilchos Metziah, we'll discuss it in more detail. So Baruch Shechiyanu V'Kiyimanu L'Zman Hazeh. In the previous shir, we discussed a fundamental machlekes in Hilchis Metziah, that there's a machlekes Abai and Rava, Yesh Alei Midas, Have Yesh, Alei Have Yesh. And we know that the halacha is like Abai, Yesh Alei Midas, Loi Have Yesh. Therefore, if you find something, even if it has no simonim, and therefore it cannot be returned to the owners. However, being that they were not yet miyash, because they only lost it recently and they haven't yet noticed that it was lost, even though they're for sure 100% going to be miyash once they figure out, being that they're not yet now miyash, it still is in their rishus, and you're not allowed to take it and keep it for yourself. Had you found it tomorrow, after it's already been sitting there for an extended period and the owners already noticed that it was gone, and they were miyash, then you would have been able to keep it. But because you found it before Yesh, so therefore you're not allowed to keep it. Based on this, tells us the Alter Rebbe in Seif Dalet, a very practical halacha, a very common scenario. Vafilu barer like sheyivada lebaylav shehu netala as a yismechu v'yagilu mipnei avas. Even if you know for a fact that yes, the owner is not going to be miyash, but when they realize that it's lost and they found, oh, this guy found it, Reuven found it, Shimon, my friend, my buddy, they're not going to be upset. They're going to be very happy for their friend, for their relative, whoever it is, to have possession of this object of theirs. They would be gladly and willingly share it with you. Nevertheless, it's forbidden to have hana from it now without the owner's permission. Because right now they don't yet know, they were not miyash. They're not. It still belongs to them, and you don't have the right to use someone else's belongings without their explicit permission, even if there is an implicit, well, maybe implicit permission is what we'll discuss later, but even if there's an umdana, an assumption that when they find out, they'll be okay with it. But right now, they're not okay with it because they don't know. Lefichach, hanichnas lepardes elaginas chaver. Therefore, somebody who enters their fellow's orchard or garden, asale lilkit peres shalemi das abayla. It's forbidden for them to pick fruits without the owner's knowledge. Even though the owner of the orchard or of the garden is a very, very close a friend. And he'll certainly be very, very happy when he finds out that his good friend is had hana from his fruits, from his produce, or whatever it is. That since right now he doesn't know, you're having hana be'isr, v'chein kol kayetza b'zeh, and so too is anything similar. And we have to tell people about this, says the Alter Rebbe, because people are nichshel this because they pasha don't know. And this was true in the times of the Alter Rebbe, and I think it's still true today.
Asking me share to three people.
Even if you know that, sorry, even if you know for a fact that whoever it is not going to mind, I can take it. That's not good enough. However, there's an important. It's not an exception, but it's a slightly different scenario. Mikol makim sifhei mutar leben beisa shaladem litin prusalayani levnoi shal oyavay shal balabay shal emidaite lefishakach nago balabatim. There's a difference between I assume that they're going to be okay with it because I know them so well, so close with them. When they find out, they'll be okay with it. And It's something that's commonly done. It's customary. It's normal. It happens every day. So when you go to someone's house, you have to ask, and you go to the bathroom, you have to ask them for permission to use soap. It's not. Okay, maybe that's also a different heter of davar mo chena derech lahak b'dalav. But to use I don't know, forks and knives, plastic cups, something that is normal. It's nohug. And when you go to someone's house, especially if it's somebody who you go to regularly, that this is what they allow you to take from their possessions. It's not something that is called. You're assuming that they're going to give you permission when they find out. They already gave you implicitly permission. And therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, it's mutter for somebody's ben bias, for somebody's child or relative who lives in the house, to give prusalani, a piece of bread to a poor person. A poor person comes knocking on the door, asking for a piece of bread. He says, I can't give you, I have to go ask the balabayas for permission. No, the balabayas, every single day, the same ani comes, or once a week, or it doesn't have to be the same ani. It's a normal thing that aniyim come and they ask for bread, and the balabayas is no noihig. It's He's accustomed to giving them tzedakah, to giving them pieces of bread. Umitchila nisratza balabayas bekach k'shehichnis pazula beisei. Milichatchila, to begin with, when the balabayas brought this bread into his house, he agreed to give it to aniyim. Ve'ein zenikr shalei midas habaylam kal. That's not called shalei midas habaylam. That's not called giving it without the owner's consent. Adar abekiven shekach nago v'habaylam yedem izah minik. Umitam zeh muter lekabel tzedakah min anoshim davar mot shalei midas balein. K'meshes bar behilchos gzela. Something we learned in Hilchos Gzela and Seif Chavdal, Hoil v'darkan bekach, v'yedem ba'alein shedarkan bekach. V'chein bepardes im hu ragel b'lechel miperesim midas habayla muter. And to go back to the first example, if you go into an orchard or a garden of another person, and they could be very, very good friend, you know them very, very well, but there's no minig, there's no custom that on a regular basis you go in and they give you permission to eat from their fruits and vegetables. You're just assuming that when they find out, they'll be okay with it because they don't mind, because we're friends. That's not allowed. That's in Sivdal. But over here, if it's something that's customary, if it's something that's normal, if it's something that happens on a regular basis, that is a different story. Now, this din comes from a story in the Gemara. It's based on a story in the Gemara. And the Alter Rebbe here in Kuntrasachar in Kovkatan Aleph explains at length that this is the shit of all the Rishonim, because there are Rishonim who want to learn that it's a machlekes Rishonim. The Alter Rebbe says it's not a machlekes Rishonim. All the Rishonim agree that this is the din. There's only machlekes in Metziah, if it's possible to say in certain cases that was the minig, but everyone agrees that if it's nahug, if it's normal, if it's customary to do a certain thing, to give it out, then that is permitted. And if it's not, you're not allowed to, even though you can safely assume that when the owner finds out, they will be okay with it. And the Alter Rebbe emphasizes that this is the shit of all the Rishonim, unlike the opinion of the Shach in Chesh Mishpat, Semashin and Ches, Skatan Aleph, Hilchos Gzela, actually, who is Mekel on this. And he explains, the Shach, that it's not the same as Yir Shalei Midas. Yir Shalei Midas is, right now, I don't know that it was lost. When I find out, I'm going to be miyayish, but I don't have a choice in the matter. Going to be miyayish because it's lost and I have no hope of ever getting it back. Over here, it's not against my will. When I find out that it's lost, I'm going to find out what happened to it. I'm not going to be miyayish. I'm going to willingly give permission to my friend to eat this or partake of this, whatever it is. The Alter Rebbe in the Kuntrasachar again at length asks many kashas on the shit of the shach, and he says that this is the shit of all the Rishonim, that this is aser, and you can see to what extent Alter Rebbe goes to be machmer in this. There isn't even a limit schos that they're semich on the shit of the shach. So it's mamash hamichshol. Something else that we mentioned also when we spoke about this in Hilchos Gzeila Gneva, but we'll speak about it again in Pesach Cheshen, is Medayek, Parak Aleph, Sif Tesvav, and Ha'ar Lametes. The Alter Rebbe says, Sheyismach v'yagil, that even if you know, Sheyismach v'yagil, that the Balabais is going to rejoice, is going to be very, very happy that you took it. Nevertheless, it's still, you might think that would be mutter. Nevertheless, it's still aser. But if not Yismach v'yagel, he'll agree, but he's not going to be happy. He'll just agree because it's awkward at that point to say no. So then l'kulei alma it's aser. L'may nafkamina, the Alter Rebbe says aser in any case. L'cher the nafkamina is in a case where the owner is there and he agrees, but you could tell that he's not sameach and is not exactly rejoicing about it. It's just it's awkward to say no. He feels uncomfortable about it. So that l'cher would also be problematic. There's also an issue of Leis Achmed, as we discussed back in Hilchos Gzeila Gneva when we spoke about Leis Achmed. Okay. The takeaway on a practical level from these two sifim, every person could figure out for themselves. A very, very common scenario. Somebody goes to their parents, their in-laws, or their children. There are certain things that it's nohug, it's normal that you go to someone's house, they give you permission to take food, to take utensils, to soap and shampoo and toothpaste and whatever is normal, and it could be more, and everybody has different minhagim. Some people are more open, some people are more particular, and obviously if a person is more particular, then if they're makbid, they're makbid. It's the same thing with taking things from an office, from a simcha hall, and on and on. If it's something that is nahug, that is normal, that is acceptable, that you could take, then that's fine. If it's something that's not acceptable for most people to take, but you know the Baal Simcha, you are very friendly with the boss, so you know that they're not going to mind, that's not okay. You have to ask for permission. Another important thing to point out is that everything we're talking about over here is eating something, is taking something that you're not using something. You go into Pardes Agina Chaveri and you pick fruits, you can't put them back on the tree. But just to use something, and then you can put it back exactly as it was, is a different case. That's all the Alter Rebbe discusses later in Hilchos Shaila, Sif Gimel, that to, let's say, use a sefer, obviously in a way that's not going to damage it, without permission. Without permission is not okay, but without permission, because you know the owner and you know that they're not going to mind because they know you well, that is a different story, and in that case, actually, it is permitted. So now, Sivav, how this connects back to Hashavas Aveda, Lefichach, Hamaytateina B'derech Tachas Ilan Hataina Shu Noit Ala Derech. Somebody who finds figs on a public path, under a fig tree that is leaning over the path, Mutar Liyachlan. It's permitted to eat them, Afa Pishabayla Min Yadin Adain Min Filas Teina Mel, even though the owners don't yet know that these figs fell. L'chera Yeyo Shalei Midas. Lefishakivan Shadarkan Shalteina Lipul Min Ilan. It's no, it's customary. It's common for figs to fall off a tree. They were already misyayish from the beginning when they planted the tree and the figs started growing. They know that they're going to be the ones that are going to fall off, and they're misyayish from them. Even if most of the passerby there are yidden, so why should they be miyayish? Yidden are still going to do Hashavas Aveda. Because there's another reason. The teina, the fig, when it falls onto the ground, nemesis, it becomes dirty, becomes repulsive. And you're not going to go looking, do Hashavas Aveda to pick up a couple of figs that are dirty. They're miyash. But olives, charuvim is carobs, and other things like that, that don't become repulsive when they fall. Aser, if most of the passerby there are Yidden, then it's aser to pick it up because they're not miyash, because most of the passerby are Yidden. So they're counting on the fact that people are going to do Hashavas Aveda. And they have a simon based on the place where it fell. And they don't become repulsive or dirty when they fall on the ground. However, dates are like figs, that the owners are miyayish, even in a place where there is Reiv Yisrael, because animals eat them because they are very sweet. This machmas mesikusam, it comes from the Maggid Mishnah, who has these words when it's talking about te'enim, and the nafkamina is obviously for other fruits that are not so sweet, that the owners would not be miyayish. But there's tamarim is a heter because nemasim and filasim. Te'enim is a heter because they're very sweet and therefore animals eat them, and therefore, if you chance upon them before the animals had a chance to get to them, it's okay to take them because the bailim are miyayish. That if you just, there's a tree and there are dates and figs that are on the ground that fell off from the tree. But if the balabayas was megaladas clearly indicated that they are not misyayish. How do you indicate that you're not misyayish? Like he set something up, a marked off area where the dates that fall off the tree should fall. And ein tzarich leimer, needless to say, if you put up a fence around the trees so that animals should not come there and eat the figs, then even the ones that fall outside of the fence are usr. Because even though, yeah, they fell outside of the fence and there are animals that are going to come and eat them. But and when they find out, when the owner finds out about this, it's going to be yeush, but that's called yeush shaloi midas. Right now, it is not permitted to take them because of yeush shaloi midas. Siv zayin chinam abaylim heim yisaimim. Likewise, if the owners are yisaimim, are children who are orphans, if their parents obviously doesn't, if there are parents in the picture, then it usually belongs to the parents. But Yisaimim who don't have parents, so it belongs to the kids. Asurim atmarim afilu b'stam. It's also asur, even without a fence, even without a gilidas. That it's asur shaktanim in yoshim chilasim klum, because ktanim do not have the ability to be miyayish or to be meichel. Even though when they get older, they'll be miyayish, they'll be meichel. Nevertheless, right now it's yesh shalem midas, and therefore it is not permitted to take them because yesh shalem midas lo yahav yesh. However, if a katan did give a gift willingly, matanasa matana metakanos chacham chazal or mazakin, that his matana should be an effective matana, so that people can do business with them. Because if you can't, if all of their transactions are null and void, then they can't get anything done. So chazal or mazakin, that if they gave a matana willingly, so that's an effective matana. But bestam, a yish of a cotton and a mechil of a cotton is not worth anything, and therefore, even without a giladas, their te'inim and their tmarim that fall off are not permitted because of yish lemidas. We'll stop here for today.